They call me Pierce. Detective, if we're being formal. I specialize in cases people are too afraid to file. The kind that don't always end with a confession, but rather a prayer. Most of the time, I'm the last one they come to, not because I'm the best, but because I don't say no. This time, the call came from an old mountain town in Vermont, a place barely marked on maps and barely remembered by time, Bellringer. A population of under 600, with more gravestones than mailboxes. A place where the fog seems to have roots, and silence carries weight. The voice on the phone was soft, breathless. There's a girl, she hears the bell. Every night. But no one else does. The caller didn't leave a name. Just the address, Candle Street 6, then a click. I arrived in Bellringer on a Friday morning, the kind where the clouds look heavy with secrets, and the wind carries the chill of things unsaid. As I stepped out of my car, locals gave me glances, not hostile, just reserved. Eyes that have seen too much and say too little. Candle Street 6 was a narrow brick house at the edge of a small cemetery. The paint peeled like it was trying to escape the wood beneath. A woman in her late 30s answered the door, pale, exhausted, haunted not by ghosts, but by worry. Detective Pierce? I nodded. I'm Clara. It's my daughter, May. She's only 9, and she's not sleeping. She keeps saying the bell wakes her. Bell? I asked. Church nearby? Clara shook her head. The old church burned down 10 years ago. The bell tower collapsed with it. But May, she hears it. Every night. Midnight sharp. She says it's getting closer. I met May that afternoon. She was a quiet, serious child with large eyes and messy hair. She didn't fidget like most kids. When I asked about the bell, her response chilled me more than the wind ever could. It rings only once. Just one sound. But when I hear it, I can't move. It's like it's calling something, or warning something, and it's louder every time. That night, I stayed in the house. Midnight came. No bell. But at 12:01, the old grandfather clock in the hallway stopped. Dead hands, no ticking. I stepped outside. Fog hugged the gravestones like a blanket. The wind was dead still. And then, a faint chime. It wasn't a bell. Not exactly. It was deeper, fuller. A calling. It came from somewhere behind the house, from the ruins of the old church. I returned to the house, trying to hide my unease. May was awake, already sitting upright in bed. You heard it, she said. I nodded. The next morning, I walked to the remains of the church. The ruins were mostly overgrown. But as I moved carefully over the debris, something caught my eye. Scratched symbols on what was left of the stone wall. Fresh. Not weather-worn. A circle. A hand. A flame. There was also a trail. A faint line of soot, leading into the woods behind the ruin. I followed it for about 30 feet before I found something else. A small brass bell, half buried in the dirt. I picked it up, and everything went quiet. No birdsong. No wind. Just the feeling that something had noticed me. I returned the bell to Clara, but told her to keep it locked. As I left, I passed an old man sitting outside the general store. He watched me the way an owl watches mice. You're poking things better left buried, he said. I stopped. He pointed toward the bell in my hand. It was a warning once, long ago. When the bell rang, people knew to stay inside. Something walked during that sound. Something hungry. What was it warning about? He smiled. No teeth. It wasn't warning us. That night I didn't sleep. The bell rang again. This time, I felt it through my bones, and when I looked out the window, there was a figure standing at the edge of the cemetery, motionless, watching the house, waiting. I didn't blink, didn't breathe. I just stared at the figure in the fog, standing at the edge of the cemetery like it belonged there, like it had never left. It was tall, thin, wrong. Something about the way it stood, too still, too symmetrical. A silhouette carved out of darkness. Even when the wind stirred the trees, it didn't move, just watched. Then the bell chimed again, once, deep, metallic, echoing, and the figure stepped forward. I backed away from the window and grabbed my coat and revolver. If this was what May had been hearing, if this was what the bell was bringing, I wasn't going to sit still. I slipped outside into the cold night. The moon above was a pale disk, shrouded in clouds that moved like smoke. Fog rolled low over the cemetery grass. curling around my boots like fingers. The figure was gone, but the bell rang again, farther away now, luring, drawing. I followed the sound. The trail led me deeper into the woods behind the church ruins. The trees were tall, blackened, some split by age or lightning. My flashlight flickered, once, then stabilized. Something metallic caught the light. Another bell, smaller than the last, hanging from a branch by a rusted wire. Then another, and another. They lined the path like lanterns, each different, each humming quietly, vibrating just beneath hearing. Ahead, the forest opened into a clearing. In the center was a stone circle, old, ancient maybe, covered in moss and clawed with scratches. In the center stood a single post, wooden and charred. Shackles hung from either side. And beneath the post, carved into the dirt, the same symbols I had seen earlier. Circle, hand, flame. I took a step forward and felt it, a weight pressing on my chest, like the air was thicker, like I was being watched by something older than eyes. Then I heard the voice. Not loud, not human. A whisper inside my head. The bell tolls, the gate thins, the promise is due. I spun around, revolver raised. Nothing. The woods were empty. Or they pretended to be. Then the shackles rattled. I left the clearing fast, marking the trees as I went so I could find it again. Back in town, I went to the historical archives, which in Bellringer meant a dusty back room in the library, maintained by one volunteer and a family of spiders. It took hours, but I found something. A local folktale dated over 150 years ago, from a leather-bound journal written by a pastor named Reverend Elias Crow. He spoke of a ritual bell, used to summon an entity known as the Watcher between walls. According to him, it was bound to the earth by the tolling of 7 bells, each blessed and placed in a specific sequence. If removed or tampered with, the boundary would weaken. Crow warned, "The 7th bell must never fall, for the 7th toll opens the gate." There was a sketch beside the entry. The same symbol, circle, hand, flame. The next night, I waited again. At 12:01, the 3rd chime. This time, I didn't wait. I headed back into the woods. The bells were humming again, louder this time. The clearing seemed darker, the air colder, and in the center, bound to the post, May, eyes wide, silent, awake. Her mother stood nearby, hands trembling, whispering something over and over. I stepped into the clearing, gun drawn. "What the hell are you doing?" Clara looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I didn't want this, I swear, but it's the only way to stop the bell. They told me she was chosen, the 7th, it ends with her." I walked toward her, trying to stay calm. "Who told you?" She pointed behind me. I turned, and saw him, the figure, closer now, no longer watching from afar. Its face was featureless, not blank, but unfinished like wet clay. But from where eyes should be, 2 black pits oozed something like ash. It raised its hand, and the 4th bell tolled. May screamed. Clara collapsed, and I fired. The shot passed through the figure, like smoke through fog, but it paused. The bells stopped. The forest fell dead silent. And then, it turned its head toward me. It didn't move. It just watched. But I knew. It wasn't done, and I was out of time. They say that when you're close to dying, time slows down. I don't know about that. All I knew in that moment was the thing in the woods was real, and it had fixed its formless gaze on me. It didn't breathe, didn't flinch when I fired, but it had stopped moving, which gave me a window, a narrow one. I grabbed Clara, pulled her away from the post, and rushed to untie May's bindings. The girl was trembling, her skin ice cold, eyes locked onto the figure that still loomed on the edge of the clearing. "It waits," she whispered. "It waits for the 7th bell." The 4th toll still rang in the back of my mind like an echo. I knew what came next. I pulled May into my arms and turned to Clara. "Run!" We pushed through the trees, retracing my marked path back toward the town. The air behind us seemed to thicken, like the forest didn't want us to leave. The 5th toll rang out. The trees swayed violently, though no wind touched my face. By the 6th, May had started muttering something under her breath. A rhyme, maybe. A chant. I couldn't make it out, but her voice sounded older somehow. Not her own. We made it out of the woods just as the 6th bell fell silent. And I knew we had minutes, maybe seconds, before the seventh. Back at the church ruins, I set May down and turned to Clara. You knew what this was. Tell me how to stop it. She shook her head violently. You don't stop it. You seal it. That's what the ritual was. That's why she was chosen. If the seventh bell rings without the offering, it escapes. I clenched my jaw. So you were going to let your daughter? Tears filled her eyes. You think I wanted this? You think I believed it at first? But then the bells started ringing, and people started dying. Her hands trembled. It came to me, in dreams, in voices. It said there was a pact, from long ago, that every generation owed a soul, and if the seventh bell rang unanswered, we'd all hear it. Then it happened, the seventh toll. The sound didn't come from a bell. It came from the sky, like thunder made of metal and screams. The air vibrated, cracked. A ripple tore through the church ruins, warping the ground like water, and the sky split. A rift, a tear, something from elsewhere forcing its way through. The figure stepped through it, full now, no longer made of mist. Its body was tall, jointed wrong, stitched together from shadows and bells. With each step it rang, softly, beautifully, horribly, and then it spoke, not aloud, but in my mind. The debt is due. The gate is open. One must remain. Time froze. I don't know how I made the choice. I only knew I couldn't let it take the girl. So I stepped forward. Take me. The entity tilted its head, as if amused or disappointed, but it accepted. The world tilted. The sky swirled. The ground vanished. And for a moment, I was nowhere. I stood in a place of bells and bones, endless, cold, silent, except for the sound of my own heartbeat. I thought that was it. But then, I felt a hand grab mine. May's. The girl had followed me into the rift. No, she said. Her voice wasn't a child's anymore. You don't belong here. And with a flash of light, the bells shattered. I woke up gasping on the ground, back in the church. It was morning. The rift was gone. Clara was gone. May sat beside me, quiet. Her eyes were her own again. I asked what happened. She just whispered. I told it no. The case was closed. The bells never rang again. But sometimes, when I'm alone, I still hear that seventh toll, and I wonder how long the silence will last.